Hey guys, good afternoon. Hope you all are doing well. We just have about another minute until we start the review, first part of the review session anyway. So hope you've all been doing good, had a good couple days since we saw you on Tuesday. Hey Philip, how's it going? Welcome back. Hey Ryan, good to see you. Corey, hey. Okay guys, so we're getting right now to the class time, so it's 2:20. Thanks again everyone. I'm glad to be with you guys, and today we have a key meeting because we're getting started on our study guide review session. So let me first begin with some quick questions. Can any of you guys just confirm, hey Oliver, can anyone confirm for me that you received the study guide that I mailed on Tuesday night? I think I sent it off, so just want to check, make sure that everyone's got it. Let me know. Cool, thank you Oliver for confirming that. So that means that it has been delivered, so everyone should have a copy of the final exam study guide. That study guide contains a list of questions from the beginning of the semester, or it's not questions necessarily, but topics and items of information that you need to be aware of to prepare for the final. You'll notice, so I would ask you right now, guys, because we're going to use this study guide to direct ourselves today and on Tuesday. If you don't already have it pulled up, please do. Either open your Canvas or email inbox if you can, and find the document. And we're just going to use that today as we go through all the topics on the study guide list. Welcome Matt, Remy, Danny, Anna, and all the rest that are here. It's good to be with you guys as usual. So about the upcoming dates of the semester. There's two more things for you to submit. One is homework 4, that's due tomorrow before midnight. So don't forget that one. That's your media critical analysis of like a television news broadcast. So as we've said, make sure that you get that in before midnight tomorrow so you still have some time, but maybe not wait to the absolute last minute. Just don't forget that because that's your last homework assignment. And it's worth up to 100 points, which is 10% of the value of your grade. And then next Thursday, of course, we have our final exam on the last day of class. So everything's done except for the 4th homework and the final. Today and on Tuesday, we're going to have 2 class periods where we're just going to go over all the information, as much of it as we can anyway, from the study guide. Now, like I say, pull up your study guide and have it to refer to. You say, oh yeah, Oliver, not to worry about that. Good question though. If you have any need to go beyond the 2-page guideline, then that's fine. I don't mind at all if you have to exceed the upper boundary of the guideline. If it was lower than the guideline though, it might be not enough. But yes, if a person wants to write 3, 4, I mean, I'm not a picky person when it comes to submitting more material than I necessarily minimally required. So yeah, in short story, yes, it's fine if it's closer to 3 than 2. And even if you needed more than that, that'd be fine too. Okay. So like I was saying, we're going to start our review session here in just a bit, and the review session will be determined by the list of topics on the study guide. So pull out your study guide now, and we'll all work through this together. Now, I think I said this before when we reviewed for the midterm exam, and this is always my kind of way of doing it, that I like it to be more student-driven, the review session. So I kind of prefer it when the students try their best to, supply the correct information in the chat. But I'll make sure to insert myself whenever it's necessary to correct things, to expand on things, or to bring us back on track if we get a little bit off. But other than that, I kind of do want you guys to, for the most part anyway, try to, practice giving the information into the chat for a few reasons. First of all, since you're the students that will have to take the test, it's good for you to get a little practice supplying the answers. Also, though, since this YouTube video is going to remain on the channel, obviously, and the live chat remains archived, then it's nice to have the live chat there to refer to later. So that's why I like the written answers to show up in this live chat. Okay, so if there's no questions about those things, just to kind of set the stage, don't forget your homework tomorrow, and let's get started on the review session. I'm now going to start looking at our study guide. Now, look at the study guide. You'll see this. There's sort of two halves to it. There's the first half of information, which is already stuff that we've reviewed prior to the midterm, because that's like just the same as the midterm review guide. Then there's the second half of it that's all the topics that followed after the midterm, starting with Chapter 5 on fallacies, and then all the way up until our recent Chapter 9 on ethics. So there's kind of like two parts to the list. I was thinking this. I was thinking today, maybe we can focus on the first half of the material, just to kind of revive your memory about some of our earlier subjects. And then on Tuesday, part 2 of the review session, we'll maybe can focus more on the second half of the list. If that sounds good to you guys, then let's just proceed in that order. So I'm going to ask you guys to take a look at the study guide and begin at the top. And here's the first question, okay? So last thing before we start, I'll say is this. Speed really helps right now. So it kind of helps to be quick and just move on to the next, because the more of these topics that we can get discussed in the sessions that we're holding, then the better it'll be for your review for the test. So try your best to kind of type out or the response as soon as you can. And also, let me say this. You can look ahead to the next item on the list, and therefore you can kind of anticipate what the next subject is going to be. So you can kind of be, not just waiting for me to pose the next question, but looking ahead and getting ready to give the answer for that one too. Okay, so start at the beginning, taking it from the top. All the way back to day 1, we had this question. What is a good critical thinker or a bad critical thinker? But let's start with the good side. So who thinks they know the answer to that question? Tell me the definition or general idea of what is a good critical thinker. So let me see what you think, and then we'll go from there. Good critical thinker, what could that be? The whole point of the class is we're trying to be more like that. So let's see if we could just put it in there. What is a good critical thinker? It's a type of person. It's a person that what? Hi, Lan, Nathan, Matthias, Elizabeth. Hey, guys. What is a good critical thinker? Okay, Lan, there you go. It is a person that will not believe a claim unless it is supported by good evidence or a good argument. Right. And you also have that, Philip, but notice, Philip, there's that second part as well when it comes to being the one who presents information. So, and when the good critical thinker makes claims to others, then they do provide good evidence and arguments to support those claims. Good. So if you're a good critical thinker, then you don't just believe things for no good reason. If you believe something, it's only because there's really good evidence or arguments to support that claim. So a good critical thinker, they're going to wait until there's good reasonable evidence or arguments before they say, I agree with that. At the same time, when you're dealing with information, sometimes you're the one who's presenting information or claims to others instead of receiving it. So when you're on the sending side of the information, you also make sure to have good evidence and arguments to back your claims up. So good critical thinkers don't just say stuff that they can't defend with evidence, nor do they just believe things that are not based on good evidence. So evidence is key for good critical thinkers. They're only going to believe things that are well-based, and they're only going to claim things that they can base with evidence. Okay, now a bad critical thinker, I guess we could just say, it's just the reverse type of person. So it's the sort of person who will believe claims that are not based on good evidence or arguments. And it's also the type of person who makes claims to people, but then they can't back themselves up with evidence. So we want to be good critical thinkers, not bad critical thinkers. We don't want to be people who just believe whatever for no good reason. And we also don't want to be the kind of people who can't back our own claims up. We would rather be the sort of person who says, I need evidence, and then maybe I'll believe it. And also, when we make claims, it comes packaged together with evidence that we could give to defend it. All right, so going to the next question or topic. Tell me, what is an argument? And I'm asking you about what is an argument in the sort of logical sense of the word, not people yelling at each other, calling each other names, which is the sort of colloquial sense of the term. I do know that. But in the formal sense of logic, an argument is something quite precise. It's a set of certain things. What is an argument? So you'll tell me it's a set of how many things and what they are and all of that. Definition of an argument. Thanks, Anna. Good. It is a set of two or more sentences where one sentence is the conclusion and all the other ones are premises. Correct. So every argument has a conclusion at the bottom where you're trying to, well, we'll talk about that in the next topic because I don't want to say too much. The next question asks more in depth. What are the parts of an argument? But your definition is correct, Anna. Every single argument is an attempt to try and demonstrate a claim based on reasonable evidence. And so it has to have multiple sentences. Notice this, there's no such thing as an argument which is just one sentence by itself. If I told you that the Lakers are the best team in basketball, that's not an argument. It may be true, I may believe that, but it would only be an argument if I had reasons that I gave behind it. Like if I say, look, they have LeBron James and he's the greatest player. Did you see his three-pointer last night? Therefore, the Lakers are the best team in basketball. I don't know if that's a good or a bad reason, but at least it's a reason. And I say, this is the basis for me making the claim. So when you have an argument, you have to have some type of reasons that are given, which then lead to a conclusion that you're saying is true. Now, maybe I did say a little too much, but that's okay. Tell me someone, if you could, what are the different parts of an argument and what is the meaning of those parts? So, what are the different types of statements that fill the positions in the argument? Good, Oliver. You have premises, that's the evidence or the reasons. And then you have the conclusion. Now, what though is the conclusion exactly? You said a lot about the premises, but maybe you could say one more thing about the conclusion. The conclusion is important because it's really the bottom line. It's the whole, well, you'll say it, the argument is given why. The whole basis of it is that you're trying to do what about the conclusion? Let me know. Correct. Thanks, Oliver. The conclusion is the claim that you're trying to prove. So say that I was like, I don't know, an investigator or maybe a prosecutor, and we have this guy that we're trying to put away for a crime. And I say to the jury, I'd say, like, look, here's some good evidence, all right? At the crime scene, we found these shell casings. And these shell casings definitely belong to a weapon that's traceable to this person. Plus, we have an audio tape of him on a phone call with an undercover officer talking about how he hates this guy and wanted to maybe commit murder against him. Now, based on that, therefore, he is the killer, guys. Therefore, we need you to vote guilty. So in this case, the conclusion I'm trying to prove is that so-and-so is the killer. And I gave a couple of premises. One premise was a type of ammunition round was recovered from the crime scene, which seems to match a weapon he owns. Also, we have evidence based on him confessing to a motive when he didn't know that he was being surveilled. So therefore, these two pieces of evidence give me a basis to say he's guilty. Notice that that's an argument because it's an argument framed on reasons, which leads to a conclusion. I'm only using this kind of court case example for the sake of discussion, but obviously it's not limited to like law and justice and criminal justice. We make arguments all the time. I could make an argument to you that, I don't know, we should vote for or we should support the transportation bill, and you're going to have a Republican that will say, no, I don't believe that we should support that bill, and we can both give our arguments. They may say it's going to lead to inflation, and therefore it's going to make the dollar less powerful, therefore it's not good. Someone else may say, no, but people need critical services, especially during a pandemic, and we've not spent enough on these things in the last generation, so therefore we should do it. And in both cases, it's an argument. So I'm just mentioning to you that arguments can happen in everyday situations. They can happen in courts. But whenever you do have an argument, the common theme is that there's a claim you're trying to prove and at least one reason given behind it. Okay, so great. Next up, when you have arguments, no, sorry, I don't want to skip too fast. Tell me, what does it mean for a sentence to be true? So you're trying to show that a conclusion is true when you make an argument, but what does truth mean? What is the definition of the concept of truth? For a sentence to be true, what does it have to be the case? To have truth. Consider, what is it for a claim or a sentence to be a true one? Somebody knows? So just say what you know. Okay, thanks, Land. Truth is when a sentence, whatever it says, matches the facts of reality. That's correct. So reality, it determines whether a sentence is true or false. If I told you that I've been to the top of Mount Everest, that's a lie. I mean, I could say this, but I would be speaking a total lie. It would not be true to say that because I've never done it. Okay, so if I had done it, that would have been a true statement. Since I haven't, it's not true. Hopefully that makes perfect sense to everybody. People can say or write things, but they're only true if objectively, in the world of facts, that's what really happened. So, I could say Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK, and if that's what happened, then that's true. And if that's not what happened, then I guess that would be a false statement. Okay, here's something. Let me make sure that we can all apply the concept. Can somebody just write in the chat an example of something that's true, which is obviously true and well known? Just some fact. Go ahead and write something that's true. A true sentence, a sentence that does match the facts of reality. There's infinitely many to choose from. So just pick your favorite fact. The sun is a star. Good, that's correct. Oliver, you say the sky is blue. It's interesting because I know that like off the top of a person's head, you're like something true, so obvious, I'll look up in the sky, it's blue. But to be fair, Oliver, I don't want to be too picky, but I kind of just have to be as a philosopher. It's not always blue. I mean, what about when it's like midnight? It's like black. So it's blue at certain times of the day, you know what I mean? But the canopy of night star doesn't look too blue. Philip, you say the Pentagon has knowledge of UFOs? Well, I know there's been a lot of reporting in the media lately about some unidentified flying objects that seem to be, observed by members of our military. At the same time, though, I haven't studied the issue completely, and so I'm not sure whether they would claim. But I think that, yeah, it's weird. There is some kind of information about it. I don't know if it means there's extraterrestrial life, or if that just means that there's sort of secret, undisclosed government aerial vehicles that we are not allowed to know about because they're classified. But anyway, another example. It's not as widely known, though, so some of our students might see it and be like, that's a little weird. So, but good example. Sugar is sweet, Lan? Okay. Is sweetness itself an objective thing, though? Because if there were no... Imagine that, like, life stopped existing. Would we still say that sugar was sweet because there could no longer be any life form to experience its quality? But I guess, maybe I'm being picky. Like, could there be another life form to whom the experience that we register as sweet is instead registered as bitter and sour? So since it's something that has to do with perception, maybe a person might think that it's possible to subject it to some type of logical criticism. The Eiffel Tower is in Paris, France. That's a fact. I am wearing glasses, which is also true, but now I'm not. So, and I honestly only wear these glasses when I'm teaching. So like 90% of the time I'm not wearing. But okay, I think you guys understand. Let me add a few more examples. We're the third planet from the sun. Let's see. First president was George Washington in the United States. Current president is Joe Biden. I don't know. There's lots of things we could say that are all true. Okay, so I'm going on. What's a belief? So truth is whenever the sentence matches the facts. But what's a belief, though? What does it mean to believe something? To believe a sentence is to what, in other words? Yes, that's right, Lan. It's when a person thinks that a sentence is true. If they think it's true, then they believe it. That's just what a belief is. With beliefs, two different people can disagree about whether something's true. Say that I was a juror and you were a juror, and we're both looking at the same set of facts, but you've come to the conclusion that this man is guilty. And I don't believe that. I think, I don't know, the evidence didn't convince me that he's guilty. So you say he is, and I don't think that's true. So here are two people with a different belief. Person A believes Jones is the killer. Person B believes Jones is not the killer. So they have different views on it, but one of them is right and the other one's wrong. They can't both be correct. So anyways, beliefs are what you think is true. We would hope that most of our beliefs are in fact true, because if they're not, then you're just living in a fantasy world where you're out of touch with reality by definition if you have a bunch of false beliefs. So being a good critical thinker helps you to have a little bit more precise and accurate belief formation process. Okay? So we can go on. What are some conclusion indicator words? Okay, so now when you have arguments, there's some words which when they're spoken or when they're written, what they indicate is that next comes the conclusion of this piece of reasoning. So there's some famously well-known conclusion indicator words. Maybe someone can hit me with the greatest hits here in this chat. Conclusion indicator words like what, for instance? Wait for it. Okay, great, thanks. We've got therefore, that's probably the big one. Thus, there's the word so. A couple more, there's a few more. Ergo, a little more of an obscure Latin one, yes. It follows that. It's also definitely one of them. Ergo, it follows that, thus, therefore, so. How about hence? Very good one, Oliver, yeah. So I think already that's a pretty good short list. And, consider how that would function in an actual part of speech or writing. Like the prosecutor says, we found this guy's DNA all over the crime scene, and he was known to be, he expressed homicidal desires with respect to this person, so we know he had a motive, and therefore, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he is guilty. Okay, so the person comes to this conclusion of guilt, but before they say that is the conclusion, they say therefore. Or you could have said, look, his fingerprints and blood were on the murder weapon, hence he was at the scene. Or it follows that he was at the scene. In conclusion, ergo, or just simply so, he was there. Okay, so in all of the cases here that I've mentioned the words, those words stand for or signify that we're about to conclude. We're about to say a conclusion. Okay, now what are some premise words? There are some premise indicator words. These are like evidence words. These are words that would be stated prior to giving reasons for a conclusion. So like if you're that attorney and prosecutor, defense, whatever, right? If you're you might say since. Since we found his blood and fingerprints at the murder scene, and since we have him on tape saying he wanted to do it, in conclusion, he is the killer. Or you could say because, that's another one. Because of the fact that we saw the blood at the scene, or since we did. Because, since, due to the fact that, there's a few more. There's given that, there is provided that, on account of, in as much as. Some of these are less, prevalent than others, but they all serve the same logical function. What they do is indicate that you're now about to be provided with evidence that will lead us to a conclusion. Okay, so I could say in making a policy argument, given that massive government spending can lead to inflation, and given that the strong dollar is necessary for a good economy, I therefore think it's a bad policy to support whatever infrastructure bill. Or you could say, on the other hand, no, since we have not invested in these areas for so long, and since other countries are starting to overtake us in terms of their infrastructure advancement, for competitive reasons, we therefore must pass the bill. Okay, so in either case, I've said because and since, and given that, as I give the reasons towards the conclusion. All right, so there's different types of sentences in logic and grammar. So I'm asking you now about a couple of those. What is an imperative sentence? What type of sentence is an imperative? Maybe an example. So let me know what kind of sentence that is, and then we'll move to examples if we can of an imperative. So yes, they are commands, correct. Thank you, Lan. Someone issue a command. What, for example, would fit that description? Give a command. Please close the door. There you go. Yes, so simply telling them, get on the ground, do your homework. Okay, these are all directives that are given to people, correct. Give a command is a command. I was wondering if anyone would notice that. Good catch, Nathan. I saw a student with a fun on the midterm. I don't know if it was this class, but it basically, if you remember, I asked the question, give an example of an imperative sentence, and a student wrote, no, you give an example of an imperative sentence. And I thought that was funny because it shows understanding that is itself a command. Okay, get up, get on the ground, stop, go, move, get out of here, help. So those are all commands, aren't they? Okay, yeah, it was pretty clever. You could do that with some of these too. Like you could do it with the interrogative. So I guess let's do that next. Who knows what is an interrogative sentence? It's a different type of sentence, not a command, but a what? An interrogative. Interrogative. This one I think is real easy. They are questions, correct. So think interrogate, that's part of the etymological root of the word. So they are questions. It's just any sentence that ends with a question mark. So what are some of your favorite questions? Go ahead. Let me make sure. I mean, this is not too tough, but yeah, if it ends with a question mark, it's going to count. Unless there's something that's just illogical and absurd that didn't form a question. But yeah, go ahead. Let's see what you think. Just to be complete. What is an interrogative? Ah, there you go. That's a clever one. What if our teeth only get hard when we eat food? Weird question. Funny. Okay, what kind of question do you want? Also interesting. Yeah, so these are all questions, but it also includes less, tricky and subtle, clever ones like, where am I? Where's the bathroom? Where did I leave my phone? Do you have a charger? So questions. Questions are not commands. They're requests for information or for action in some cases. I guess you could say, can you help me? That's kind of almost like you might think it's stated as an interrogative, but it's not really a command because it's asking the question in a more polite way. If you say, help me, you're just bypassing the issue of whether they would consent to do it. So I guess in technical terms, when the question mark's at the end, it's not really an imperative. Even if I say, can you please get on the ground? But anyway, all right. Next, what is an Asterotoric sentence? What is that? These are key because these are the only kind of sentences that are ever used in premises and conclusions of logical arguments. So yeah, that's a sentence that's either true or false. Sometimes in logic we refer to that, or in philosophy we refer to that as a sentence that has a truth value, meaning that whether you know what the truth value is or not, it definitively is either true or false. Hey Brittany, welcome back. Just going through our study guide right now. So for those that are joining the meeting, we're midway through the chapter 8 topics, and we're on to what is an Asterotoric sentence. So yeah, it is a true or a false statement. It's a sentence that's either true or false. Now go ahead and, if you can, write down what are some different Asterotoric sentences. They're also sometimes called declarative sentences. But anyway, what would be an example of that? So think of something that you can say which may be true or it may be false, but it's at least a claim. It's at least an assertion. Could be a true assertion, could be a false assertion. Either way, though, it will be in this category. So say something that, could be either true or false. You got infinite options. No shortage of options. So you can say something true, something false. It doesn't matter, just anything. Go ahead. The only rule is you can't ask a question or give a command. So other than that, fire away. Aliens kidnapped you. Okay. With the exclamation point even. Wow, okay, so this is like an urgent message that you're trying to put out there. Anyway, yeah, so I'm assuming it's false, but you say it, and here's the thing. It's either true or false. It can't be both. You either were or you weren't. And if you were, then you're speaking the truth, and if you weren't, then you're saying something that's not correct, but either way, it is an assertion, isn't it? Okay. Land, getting so philosophical, I don't exist. There's a philosopher, Peter Unger, who wrote a paper called, I think it's like I don't exist. And he makes that argument. It's the funny, it's pure philosophy stuff. It's modern day philosophy. But he says, all there are atoms. All there are particles. So if you really think about it, the only thing that really exists are the atoms. There's no objects. So this table is just a bunch of atoms that look like a table. Or what you are is just a bunch of atoms that looks like a person that's talking and thinking. But the atoms are the only real thing. The things they combine are just forms and shapes that are kind of constantly gaining and losing mass. And so anyway, don't want to mess your head up too bad. But I would say you do exist, Land. But I guess there's at least one person who would make the argument that formally maybe not. Ice cream exists, you exist. So you're talking about claims that something exists. Those can all be, yes, Asterotoric sentences. If I say the sun is out, I mean, that's something that's either true or false, depending on where I'm at. If I say, I don't know, let me think. Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK, you know, that's what I guess the official story is. You do have some like people that believe in a conspiracy that it was not done by that person, that they were framed. So I guess one way or the other, though, he either did or didn't. He can't be both a killer and also not. So Sheila is pregnant, you know, suppose there was someone named Sheila. This is either true or it's false, but it cannot be both. Not at the same time anyway. Okay, so got it. That's some examples of Asterotoric sentences. Now, this is an important question next up because it says define a deductively valid argument. And I will definitely ask this question or something along these lines on the exam because it's such a fundamental point within critical thinking and logic. So it's important for us to remember, and you can just take it for granted that I will ask this question or something like it. So what's the definition of a deductively valid argument? When you have a good deductive argument, there's a certain way of putting that. It means that what? That if something, then something else, but you'll fill me in. Deductively valid argument means what? Anna, if all the premises are true, then in that case, the conclusion must also be true. Perfect, yes, that's right. That's the correct definition of deductive validity. So again, as you've written rather, if all of the premises of the argument are true, then they necessitate that the conclusion must be also. It's important that you include the words if and then in the definition, because when an argument's valid, it doesn't mean that the premises actually have to be true. It just means that if you imagine that they are true, then they would imply the truth of the conclusion. Because, as we're going to speak about in a moment here, it's possible to have valid arguments that are not sound. And that's why we don't say that when all the premises are true, therefore the conclusion must be. We say if all the premises are true, then the conclusion must also be. So let's follow along on to the next point, which is related. What does it mean when an argument is sound? Who can tell me this? What is a sound argument, or what is the meaning of that concept? Sound argument. Correct, Philip, thank you. It is a valid argument which has got all true premises. Thanks. So sometimes you have valid arguments where at least one premise is not actually a fact. It would still be valid then, but it would not be sound, because to be sound, it has to be both. It has to be valid, but also every premise is like literally true in the real world. So let's go ahead and try to give both sorts of examples, guys. Tell me, if anybody can, what is an example of an argument which is valid, but it's not sound? And since I want us to be all able to like recognize what parts of the argument you're typing, can you just do me this one thing? Like when you're listing the premises, number them, like 1, 2, whatever. And then when you get to the conclusion, just write the capital letter C before it so that I can see, because it won't be too hard otherwise to like format it properly and see what all the parts are. So go ahead, try to give me some valid argument which is not sound. In other words, it has to be like logically the right form, but it just has to have at least one false claim in those premises. Now, if you're spinning your wheels right now trying to think of an example, I'll try to give you this hint, or sometimes this helps a little bit. Sometimes it's easy to generate a valid but not sound argument by having the words all or no in some of the premises. Like if you make a false all statement, then that will make the argument unsound already, and then you can simply follow the logic through to the valid conclusion. Or if you have a false no statement, you could do the same. So like if I say all dogs can fly, like that could be the opening premise of a valid argument that isn't sound. But again, I'm talking too much. I'm going to say less. You will tell me right now an example of your own where the argument's valid but it's not sound because there's a false claim in there, in the premises. So what could that be? Let me know. It's just a valid argument with something false in it. So let's put it together and give me an example. Okay, here's Philip. All politicians are lizards. That's already funny. And then from there, politicians run the world. And so therefore, the world is run by lizard people. It's a valid argument, yes, but it is not sound. And why isn't it sound? It's not sound because of the first premise, which is, of course, false, the statement that all politicians are lizard people. So good. I mean, you have a valid argument. The conclusion follows from the premises. Like, if those premises are true, then that conclusion is going to be true too, because that's what the premises just logically imply. But it's not sound because although it's valid reasoning, it contains a false assertion to start. That's a good one. Anybody else have another, just to kind of give us a few examples? But that's the right kind of genre there, Philip, so you're in the right position to be able to say that. I'd love it, though, if we had maybe one more, just because it's such a key thing that I don't want us to, like, just have a vague or kind of, like, halfway understanding. The more examples and discussion, it sinks in better. At least that's what I've seen in life. So what's another possibility? To those that see Philip's example, I mean, you can follow that same theme. Here you go, Lan. All human beings have walked on the moon. Okay, right. Where will you go from there? You're going to name some human being, I figure. Who is it? Tom Brady's a human being. Yes, correct. And therefore, you've got a conclusion that follows, which is what? I think everybody should be able to understand what this conclusion is going to say. What is it going to say? Go ahead. Therefore, Tom Brady has walked on the moon. Correct. Only thing I would say, Lan, is a very small thing, but maybe just don't number the conclusion itself. The numbering is just for the premises. The conclusion is like in a separate section, so it's not like part of that list. But anyway, you could write just therefore, or you could write the letter C as a preface to the conclusion sentence. Okay, good. So those are good examples. Thanks, guys. Now I want to get another type of example if I can. Just give me a sound argument now. Okay, so sound, as you said above, is just a valid argument where the premises are all true. So you know how before I was saying try to think of a false all statement or a false no statement? Now you can have a valid sound argument by just giving a true all statement or a true no statement. Like, here's one example that I'm just going to give you, but you can think of your own. All presidents, no, sorry, I'll say it this way. No woman has been president of the United States. Elizabeth Warren is a woman, and therefore she has not been president of the United States. This is valid, and it's sound because the two claims that are premises are both true. Or I could say all human beings were born on the earth. LeBron James is a human being, and therefore he was born on the earth. That would be a true set of premises, and it's valid. But let me get one from you. We had a couple of good creative, not sound examples. So maybe sound will be easy enough. Sound, just have to be real statements that are actually true, but the argument's valid in form. So what do you think? I mean, in a way, it should be easier, right, to come up with the actually like realistic ones than these weird every man can fly, Joe Biden's a man, so he could fly. I mean, that's weird, but that's valid, but not sound. Sound should be easier. I mean, it's just going to be facts. So give me a valid argument where it's all facts. So many facts, guys. All mammals breastfeed their young. No man has been to the Mars. I mean, there's so many things. Just continue with your own example, though. Cars use gasoline, Ryan. Tesla is a car, and therefore Tesla uses what? Come on, though, Ryan. Come on, Ryan. No. Taking that out. Your argument is not sound. Because the first premise you said was cars use gasoline. Tesla is a car, therefore Tesla uses gasoline. Teslas don't use gasoline, they're electric cars. So your first premise, which says cars use gasoline, it's not specified in the proper way because all cars don't use gasoline, so it's not a correct statement. Okay, Lan, all humans have two parents. Elon Musk is a human, and therefore Elon Musk has two parents. Yes, correct. Now, when you say two parents, I don't want to be too picky, but it's fair to say, yes, every single human being has a pair of gametes from two other humans. But there have been test tube babies, right? There have been people that go to an in vitro fertilization clinic, and they're just sperm donors that they can like select from to fertilize their egg in a test tube, and then maybe give it to like a surrogate for the process of birth. You know, like someone can have their eggs frozen, and then when they're out of viability of like having children, they may want to like cause those eggs to actually be fertilized and then raise a child on their own, like a single mother. Does that mean they have two parents? I guess so, because you could trace the progenitor of the two set of gametes to two different individual humans. Anyway, I'm being too picky. Yeah, it's a good example. All humans have two parents. Elon Musk is a human, yes, and therefore Elon Musk has two parents. Good. Ryan, do you understand why I had to delete your thing, though? It was not because I'm trying to be like, you know, critical too much, but I just don't want people to see the example and give that, because that would not have been sound. And if people are looking back at the chat later and they're like, oh, what's the sound one? I need to see a sound one, and they see that, they're going to be like, I'm confused. Teslas don't use gas. Okay. When you have a sound argument, Ryan, the conclusion's never false, nor is any premise. So you can tell it's not sound because the statement that Teslas run on gas is false. Okay. So let's continue. What is an inductively strong argument? What does it mean for an argument to be inductively strong? So we have deduction and induction. Those are the two main patterns of reasoning in logic. Deductive means, well, deductively valid. If all premises are true, conclusion has to be. With induction, wait, Ryan, are you still confused, Ryan? Is that what you mean? Because if you're still confused, we can't move on. We need to make sure you do understand this. Look, Ryan, a sound argument is valid with all true premises. Now you say cars use gas. What do you mean? All cars use gas? Most cars use gas? Or some cars use gas? Can you disambiguate the first premise? How would you have written it if I asked you to write all, most, or some? Because if you had said all, it would have been false. But the conclusion only follows logically if it was assumed that you meant all cars use gas. All cars use gas isn't true, so it's not sound. Okay, land. If all the premises are true, then in that case, the conclusion is highly likely to be true, correct. So when you have an inductively strong argument, the truth of the premises doesn't guarantee the conclusion, but it does make it seem like it's probably going to happen or that it's probably true. So let me ask you then for an example of that. What would be an inductively strong argument example? So premises make it seem probably like this conclusion will happen or be the case. Let me know. Inductively strong. So, you know, the pattern is going to be like, we have all these reasons to think this is true, even though it might possibly not be. These are good reasons to think that that will be true. So what could be like an example of that type? Inductively strong. Just take a moment and think about it, but don't leave me hanging too long. What do you think? Inductively strong. Inductively strong. Cat got your tongue, what's up? Say it. An inductively strong argument. Let's go. Speed, speed, speed. It's got to be fast. The faster we are, the better it is for everybody, because we want to get through as many of these items as possible. So don't wait. Like diffusion of responsibility. Don't wait for anybody else. Just start answering the question. What is an inductively strong argument? An example of it. Someone has to say it. There you go, Anna. The sun has come up every morning for billions of years, therefore the sun will come up tomorrow. That's like a very textbook example. Yes, we've heard that one. Probably the sun will come up tomorrow, but after all, I guess you can't 100% guarantee it. Anything could, I suppose, with a low degree of probability happen. Maybe the sun could be blown up by a giant passing asteroid or something. But at any rate, with that long track record, we think it's probable that it's going to continue for at least one more day. You say this, Lan, we had Dr. Village class every Tuesday and Thursday, so we'll have his class next Tuesday. Let me correct that one though, Lan. Something's wrong. So you can't say like all the days, he's always there. Oliver, you could have left it up. I see that you're giving the definition, although now I see that you probably realize that we're going over examples based on that definition. Right, and that's also correct, Matthias, but right now, since we see that Lan defined the concept above, we don't need more statements of the definition, just examples. And there you go, Brittany, another one. You've run for the past 100 days, therefore you'll run tomorrow. Only issue with that is that it's up to your decision. It's not like a prediction, is it? So, you know, normally when you're reasoning about something that you're not 100% certain whether it will happen or not, because you don't have control over whether it happens or not. But anyway, it's a good example based on form. If something has happened 100 times, then it's probably going to happen in the next case too, 100 times in a row anyway. So Lan, what I was saying to you though is you shouldn't say every. You should say he has come to class so far, and then say the number of like weeks. Because if you just say he always comes to class, it's deductive then. Always leaves no exceptions, because always covers the past, present, and future. So you just have to say up to this point, here's what we have seen. And then you would, on the basis of those observations, conclude that it's probable in the next case it will continue. But if you just say like, every day I go on a run, so therefore I'll go on a run tomorrow, this is not stated in the proper form. You have to say, like Brittany has said, there's a duration of time that this has occurred over, and then that will make clear that it's probable that it will continue. Okay, other cases of inductive arguments. I don't know, if something's not likely to happen based on like a big breadth of experience, like let's say there's only a couple of like white tigers out there in the wild, and so like John has captured a tiger, therefore this is not a white tiger. I guess you could just say that that conclusion is probable, because if he's out there trying to catch or poach any tigers, it would not be very likely that he would catch that particular color, since there's not so many of them in the field. Anyway, guys, inductively strong arguments. With them, we have a probable conclusion. The evidence makes it seem like it's likely, but it's not a guarantee. Okay, now to the next thing. Well, what would be inductively weak? I'll just briefly talk about that. An inductively weak argument is one where the premises do not even lead probable support to the conclusion. Like if I say to you that I found $20 bill on the ground yesterday, so therefore I will find $20 bill on the ground today, that's not a very probable conclusion based on the reason given. Because finding money one time randomly on the ground is not something that's got any likelihood of just recurring with a frequent sort of consistent basis. So you need to have like at least high enough quality reasons to make the conclusion likely for it to be inductively strong. Otherwise, it's inductively weak. Okay. So next, let's go over this. There's a couple of different types of deductively valid argument forms that we studied. We studied 4 of them. There's quite a few more actually in the world of logic, but these are 4 important ones that we did learn. So no, Lan, the terminology sound does not apply to inductive arguments at all. No inductive argument is sound because no inductive argument is valid. They're all invalid. Validity means that there's no possible way the conclusion could be false when the premises are true. And in every single inductive argument, that is not the case, because in every single inductive argument, there's a strong connection between the premises and the conclusion, but it's not airtight. It always leaves possible room for the conclusion to turn out false. So soundness requires validity as one part of its definition. So since inductive arguments are technically invalid, they're none of them sound. Even if all the premises are true, they'd violate the other part of soundness, which is they're not valid. So good question. My next question, though, was about this topic. What is a disjunctive syllogism? So anybody can tell me like the form of the disjunctive syllogism or an example or both. So to be a disjunctive syllogism argument, what does it look like? What are the different statements that are found inside of that type of argument? And we can try to give examples too, but maybe the best is to start with the form and then go over the examples from there. So who knows about disjunctive syllogism? Okay, good, Brittany. Either A or B, not A. therefore B. Let me put that form here on the board so we can all see it clearly. So what it says is either A or B, not A. And so therefore, conclusion, B. This is the disjunctive syllogism. Now, Lan, no. A disjunction is an either-or sentence, but a disjunctive syllogism is not an either-or sentence because a disjunctive syllogism is a set of multiple sentences. One of them is a disjunction, but the other ones aren't. So let's keep a few things clear. A disjunctive syllogism is adjectively described as a disjunctive syllogism because it has one disjunction in it. But we cannot conflate the concept of an individual disjunction sentence with a full argument which has 3 different sentences in it. So to correct you, a disjunctive syllogism is a deductively valid argument where the first premise is a disjunction, and then after that we have a negation. Finally, the conclusion is the other disjunct of the disjunction that was not negated. So following this format, go ahead and try to report an example. Give an example of a disjunctive syllogism, and just you can write the premises number 1 and 2 with the conclusion prefaced by a capital C. So what could be one possible case of a disjunctive syllogism? You just got to plug in A and B. And if you just plug in terms for A and B, you'll have an example right there. So what do you think? Give me something. This is the right form. Now we just would like to apply it to some cases. So, you know, the only, I guess, piece of thought that you really have to have right now is how to state the first premise. From there, the rest is just kind of automatic because it follows from whatever you say in the beginning. So Nathan, either you're with me or you're against me, and you're not with me, and therefore you're against me. Okay, there you go. That would be one type of disjunctive syllogism. The person is either supportive or opposed. You say they're not supportive, so therefore they're opposed. That would be one good example, yes. Let's try another. It's good to always have maybe more than one, you know, just to have a couple of looks at the same. Philip, if I study, no, sorry, I'm taking that out. No, Philip. That's not a disjunctive syllogism. What are you writing if and then? If and then don't occur in a disjunctive syllogism. Can we get a right example, Philip? A different one that's a disjunctive syllogism? What you just wrote was like if this, then that. There's no if then at all in a disjunctive syllogism. Maybe you're thinking of one of the next ones that we'll talk about. So save the example for then. But what is another example of a disjunctive syllogism? Look at Nathan's example. Try to follow the format or look at what's on the board. You're hearing what I'm saying. Either A or B, not A, so therefore B. So give an example like that. Think of it, freestyle it. You looking in a book, just tell me something, come up with something. Lan, either Sam goes to the army or he goes to college. He didn't go to the army, and therefore he goes to college. Okay, that's another good enough example. You have a case of 2 possibilities. He's going to do this with his post-high school career, or he's going to do that. And he didn't do the one, so he's doing the other. Now, let me make a point here. With disjunctive syllogism, it's sometimes possible to have the opposite order here with these 2 last statements. So it's possible also to have this case. Not B, and therefore A. So this is the other alternative possibility. Yeah, so Philip, either you eat or sleep. You didn't eat, and therefore you're sleeping. Good, thank you. Just want to make sure you get that in your mind. Sometimes the correction sticks with you, and so it's good. Next, Matthias, right? I will either be successful or die trying. Get rich or die trying, right? Like the classic 50 Cent album, 2003. I did not become successful, and therefore you died trying. Okay, good. Fair example. Another good one. Notice that, as I was trying to say here, sometimes with disjunctive syllogism, we may eliminate the other disjunct. If so, then the other non-eliminated alternative is the conclusion. Disjunctive syllogism is sometimes also called argument by elimination. Don't forget that. It's called that because the second premise eliminates one of the 2 cases mentioned here. And since it eliminates it, it's the other one that ends up being the conclusion. So like, I don't know, here's another one. Well, A and B is going to throw us off. So let's say well, I'll just do it this way. Either Trump or Biden lost the election. Biden didn't lose, and so Trump lost. You know, like either this or that, but not the one, so therefore the other. Whenever you have a set of two cases, and one of them is going to be the case, then if you can eliminate the other side, you know that the other one is true. Suppose that we say either Smith or Jones is the father, because let's suppose that this woman has only had sex with these two people, and she's now pregnant. So it's like it's either Smith or Jones, based on her like relationship history and whatever. And so we do a DNA test, and we've eliminated Smith, or let's say we've eliminated Jones by the DNA test. It's not Jones. So guess what? Smith is the father. You guys understand that? This is argument from elimination. It's a disjunctive syllogism where you start with two possible cases. One is ruled out, so the other one is true. Okay, just spending a little moment on that. But let's continue. We have a few more of these types of deductively valid argument forms. So the next one to ask about is modus ponens. How does modus ponens go? Let me know about modus ponens. So let's ask what's the form, and then we can add some examples from there. Modus ponens, the format. Okay, good. If A, then B, A, so therefore B. Correct. Now, but Lan, what did you write? You just wrote if A, then B, you're going to write the rest? Because I'm thinking, do you misunderstand that it's the whole argument? You did this above. When I asked about disjunctive syllogism, you just said either or sentence. Okay, you entered it too fast. I got you. All right, just making sure we're not confused, because one sentence is never an argument. Okay, but yes, the first sentence of such an argument is a hypothetical. It's an if A, then B type of sentence. And Philip, you have the whole thing, even though I would have liked it if you'd written with numbers and stuff and separated the parts. But okay, modus ponens. So we start in modus ponens with this statement. It's a conditional, if A, then B. From there, we affirm the antecedent, A, and so what follows is conclusion, B. They're called conditionals or hypotheticals, these if-then sentences, and there's two parts to every conditional, or if you want, hypothetical. There's the if part, which they refer to as the antecedent, and then there is the then part, which they refer to as the consequent. So you have a conditional, followed by the antecedent, therefore consequent. So now, let us plug in for A and B and give an example of modus ponens. Modus ponens affirming the antecedent. Who knows it or who has an example of it? Modus ponens, what's that? I mean, you see these letters. You see what they say. So you can write in an example. Go ahead. If A, then B, A, so B. Just plug in some things. I mean, all you got to do is really think of an if-then. Like, think of something that causes something else. Okay, Nathan, if the plant gets watered, then it will live. The plant got watered, and therefore it will live. There you go. That's a totally clear example. It makes sense, straightforward. The water causes the plant to live or grow or whatever, but you use live. So if you water it, it lives. You do water it, and therefore, boom, it's living. Easy enough. Maybe let's get one or two more if we have anyone out there with another case, just so that you can, again, see it from a few different angles. So Philip, you say if I eat too fast, I'll be sick. I ate too fast. Therefore, I am sick. I hope that's not sound, because that means that if it's sound, then you're not feeling too well right now, but that's a good one. Lan, if I study for the test, I'll get a good grade. You'd think. And then I study for the test, so therefore I'll get a good grade. Yes, another good, valid argument, which is modus ponens. All right, good, guys. Keep this in mind, though. It's not modus ponens if you do the wrong steps. If you say if A, then B, And so B, therefore A, that's wrong. Here's another one from you, Matthias. If it rains, I won't leave the house. It's raining, and so you're not leaving the house. Good. Correct. All good. Cool. So I think that we all seem to have no problems with modus ponens, or at least it seems that way based on these examples. So I can clear that off. Next, we have to talk about modus tollens. Modus tollens, kind of like the cousin or sibling, if you will, of modus ponens. What's modus tollens look like? Tell me the form, and we'll add that to our notes and to the board too. Modus tollens. What's this one? So just keep rolling through the study guide. And we got to remember modus tollens one time. What is this? Thank you, Lan. If A, then B, not B, and therefore not A. Correct. So I'll put it here. Not B, and therefore not A. Okay, so with modus tollens, we have a conditional, and then after that, we follow by denying or eliminating the consequent. And so think about it logically, right? If the consequent is false, then obviously so is the antecedent, because the antecedent causes the consequent. So we know on the basis that this is false that also this is. So go ahead if you can and give me examples of this. You can also always generate examples of modus tollens by simply switching around some of the statements in your modus ponens argument. So like, I'm not saying to do that now necessarily, but if I was looking at like, I don't know, Philip's example, you know, if I eat too fast, I'll be sick. I'm not sick, right? And so just think about that right there, pause. If I'm not sick, then I did not eat too fast, because what it says is that if I do eat too fast, then I am sick. So if I'm not sick, then I must not have eaten too fast. Just one example. But let me give something, you some time to give me your own. What is a different case? So modus tollens from you. Let's go. Okay, Anna. If she studies, she will pass. She didn't pass. Therefore, she did not study. That's good, yeah. In that example, you can see the format is clear. You have studying leads to passing, but she didn't actually pass. And if she didn't pass, then she didn't study, because as you said in the first premise, if she had studied, she would have passed. Okay, good. Let's add another one or two if we could. You know, who's got it? Okay, Lan, here you say, if I see him, then we'll go on a date. And we didn't go on a date, therefore I didn't see him. Okay, it's an interesting example. It's a little awkward, though, because what, just seeing this person means you go on a date? I mean, how would that work? Just looking at them and they're like, I'm dating you. But fair enough. I guess maybe I can imagine the context, like the date is planned in case you guys bump into each other or something, but yeah. Like, or you're like going to ask him out if you see him. But since you never ended up going out on the date, then you must never have seen him, because you had this like intention full blown. Like, if I lay eyes on this dude or whatever lady, then I will make sure we go on the date. And we never did it, so it must have meant I never came in touch with him. It's, you know, it sounds a little scary almost, but I understand it. Philip, if I run while eating, I will vomit, and you didn't vomit, and therefore you did not run while eating. Yeah, running while eating is probably not a good idea. You've heard of people doing these weird runs where they drink a bunch of beer and then they go on like a hardcore 5K. You know, some people just want to be like an Iron Man, I guess. But yeah, okay, those are good examples. And endless additional examples could be good. Okay, so what's next is chain argument. Okay, good. One more, Oliver. If I eat this rotten food, then I get sick. And you did not get sick, so you must not have eaten the rotten food. Correct. Another fair example. Just got to follow the form, and you'll understand, and you, I hope, do understand that there's no limit to what type of examples can be generated based on these forms. Language is like limitless. I mean, think of all the things you can just say in language. Arguments are similar. We can frame them almost infinitely many combinations. Okay, so for the chain argument, let's know what is the structure, format, and example of chain argument. And then we'll be done with these forms of deductively valid arguments, which is the bulk of the chapter 1 stuff. Okay, Alex, if A then B, if B then C. So therefore, if A then C. Yes, that's a chain argument. Here's how it looks. So chain. If A then B, so A leads to B. After that, B leads to C. Sorry about the markers, they're getting a little dry. I need to get a new pack. And so from here we conclude that if A leads to B and B leads to C, then that means therefore that if A, we are also going to have C because it follows through a series of steps like a chain reaction. So if A, then C. Okay, now, don't hold back. Give me an example of a chain argument. Just give me some like little chain reaction of stuff. From A we go to B, from B we go to C, and so it does mean that A will imply C. So go ahead. What's stuff that causes other stuff? Like this thing happens, and if it does, then this other thing's going to happen. But if that other thing happens, it's going to be the cause of something even further on. And then we could just summarize at the end the connection between the first event and the last one in the series. So go ahead. Like while you're thinking, for example, if the ice caps melt, then coastal regions will be submerged in water. And if coastal regions are submerged in water, then the west coast of the United States will be uninhabitable. So if the ice caps melt, the west coast of the United States will not be inhabitable. As an example, Brittany, if it rains, then I can't drive to work. And if I can't drive to work, I'll be fired. So if it rains, I'll be fired. Ouch. Yikes. Tough work environment. They're going to fire you for the rain that produced your late arrival. Anyway, logically speaking, yeah, that's valid and that's the right form. Oliver, if I'm sad, I'll take a shower. Okay. Maybe not a bath. Not those luxurious and make you feel better. But anyway, if I'm sad, I'll take a shower. If I shower, the water bill will go up. So if I'm sad, the water bill will go up. Okay. Fair. Good example. Nathan, if I eat chips, the salt will dry out your mouth. And if the salt does do that, then you'll get thirsty. And so if you eat these chips, you'll get thirsty. That's another fair example too. And Philip, if you fart, the room will smell. Okay, I can probably agree. If the room smells, I'll have to leave the room. Therefore, if I fart, I'll have to leave the room. Really? Because then everyone would know that it was you. But yeah, okay, I understand. Makes sense. Okay, cool. So good guys. We're all good on that. Next and last question from the first section of notes is about standard form. What is the standard format of an argument? How visually is it supposed to look? Like, for example, what you're looking at here on the board. Can you explain to me the visual formatting? Like, where do the pieces go? What's above and below what? How do we list the things? Like, how is a logical argument supposed to be displayed on the page or on the screen? Let me just know how you put that. What are you looking at on this board? Like, not in terms of content, but just visual structure. The standard form. Arguments are always supposed to be written in this type of format. Where did the conclusion go? Where do the premises go? Blah, blah, blah. Tell me that. You're looking at the list, right? Keep the list. I feel like you should have this list because don't wait for me to ask you the question. Like, be looking ahead and anticipating. Premises above a line, conclusion under the line. That's right, Brittany, but there's just one last thing I was hoping you would mention, and that's about the premises. How are they supposed to be listed? They have to be listed in vertical order. You're not supposed to allow them to run on continuously on the same horizontal line. So like here, for example, look, what if I had this? If I run, then I'll sweat. What's wrong with this modus ponens right here? Like, this is wrong. What's wrong with it? Why is that not in standard form? I mean, it's valid in terms of content, but just why is it not formatted on the page or on this board the right way? Tell me what the error is with this one. Why have I crossed it out? Why would that receive a little point deduction if that was the way you wrote an argument? Like, say I asked you for modus ponens and you wrote this. Why would you not get all the credit? Just making sure you can diagnose it. You're the grader. You see this, you're me. You're like, point off. Why? Question, what's wrong with this? The one that's below, which I've crossed out. Simple enough, but you'll tell me. What is it? The error, spot the error. What is it? This is one where you can't just look at notes. You have to just look at this and tell me right now by thinking what's wrong with it. The second part has to be under the second, well, use the right terminology. Lan, you say it's in the wrong format, but that's the circular answer. I'm asking you, why is it in the wrong format? What element of it is wrong? Brittany, the second premise is not separated and a line is not drawn above the conclusion. Exactly. Can we all agree and understand that this is two premises, but they're running continuously on the same line? That's not okay. This part that says I ran has to be set below. So what you're looking at here is wrong. Here's how it would look if it was correct. This is Modus Ponens, by the way, below. So don't want you to think I'm looking at chain arguments anymore, so get rid of that. If I run, then I'll sweat. Return key, go down, below, below, below. You can't keep writing continuously. Second premise, number them so that you can see that they're separate. I ran, and therefore I sweated. This is standard form, okay? The premises are divided from each other by numbers, and there's a horizontal line placed in between the set of premises and the conclusion, which is below. So yes, the conclusion is below. Brittany, you're right about that. The premises are above that line, but the last point to mention is that the premises have to be separate on different, like, ledger lines. They can't just be on the same, like you're writing just prose, like left to right, continuing on. When one sentence ends, when there's a period, it's like return key down to the next. Okay, now that's pretty much all the notes from the Chapter 8 original topics of the class. So I wanted us to definitely focus on some of those things today because it's been a while since we talked about it all, and I want it to be fresh enough in your mind that you can remember those things. After that, there's a set of questions about Chapter 1 and the material in that. So let's try to just go lightning round and get as much of these out as we can, and then we'll start next time with the second half, stuff that's after the midterm. Okay, Milgram Experiment. Somebody tell me what that is. Zimbardo Experiment. Somebody else tell me what that is. And let's get two at the same time. Somebody do Milgram. Somebody do Zimbardo. How about this, just so that we have like a division? Well, no, I'll wait till the next one. I'll let you continue with what you're doing. So just simple. Like, you don't have to give me all the details right now. On the actual exam, you'd probably write a more thorough response. But I'm asking you for just the basic, even anything in the ballpark of relevance about Milgram, and then Zimbardo. So what's Milgram, what's Zimbardo? To whoever's answering whichever of the two, just tell me that Milgram colon and then give a little brief description. Zimbardo colon, brief little description. These are famous social psychology experiments that we studied. They're way back in the beginning of class, but I hope that your memory is not lost on these facts. Okay, so Milgram, experiment designed to answer the question of how far would the average person go in following orders? Yes, and there's a couple of other really basic details about it, but we'll come back to that. Zimbardo, somebody. I thought we'd get two at the same time, but it looks like we're not doing that. Zimbardo. I'll make it better, though, for the next question, I think, so that I can separate the labor a little more and we get more answers all at the same time. I'm asking about Zimbardo, though, and then I'll talk about both once I see it in the chat. Do you remember? You forgot what Zimbardo talked about and what he studied? Don't hold back. Just go ahead. Just put it in there. Zimbardo did the prison experiment to see how power affected people. All right, good. Now here I'll just add the couple of additional details. Milgram, it was based on giving these electric shocks to a learner. The teacher and the learner were the subjects in the study. They asked the teacher, deliver an electric shock to the learner whenever they give an answer wrong on a memorization question. And with each wrong answer, increase the voltage of the shocks. Now, what they're really testing, though, because the shocks weren't even happening, but they thought they were, was how far will people go when they're being asked to follow the authority figure's commands, or how many of them will their conscience kick in and they'll simply refuse to do anything else. And people thought that there would not be that many people that would even give most of the shocks, but perhaps it was a disappointment to learn that fully 2/3 of the individuals that were in the teacher's role gave all of the shocks. So it kind of reminds us that good critical thinking skills give us the ability that we need sometimes to intellectually resist authority and to think about what we're doing and why we're doing it, whether it's right or wrong. Now, Zimbardo was a Stanford prison experiment, yes. They wanted to simulate a prison environment in the basement of Stanford's psychology department. It was supposed to run for 2 weeks. The point was they were trying to see how power dynamics will affect people's behavior. When some people are given a lot of authority and control and other people are powerless, and there's like loose guidelines that they're given to oversee the process, what will that result in? And what it showed is that actually people can be pretty bad and sadistic when they've been given authority and power and not much guidance. It was supposed to go for 2 weeks. It had to be stopped after 6 days because of the abuse and mistreatment of the prisoners to the so-called guards. So once again, critical thinking would help to get to a better outcome because it's the kind of skill that helps you to think about what you're doing, whether it's morally or intellectually justified. Okay, from the Zimbardo and the Milgram, there's 3 stages of cognitive development. Can anybody just tell me the names of the 3? Blank, blank, blank. This is talked about by William Perry Jr. And there were these 3 words that were supposed to describe the lifelong process of acquiring intelligence and problem-solving abilities. So he thought that develops in 3 different stages. Even if you just have the words ready at hand, then I'll expand on that a little. So let me know if you can tell me. The 3 so-called stages of cognitive development. Something-ism, something, and okay, there you go. Dualism, relativism, commitment. Sure. Thank you guys, Nathan and Anna. So with dualism, the person thinks the truth is all black and white, and authority figures have the answers to every question. So the person basically just believes, fill me in on information. I have no power to determine it on my own. Authority figures on high. They know everything. They have absolute truth, and I'll just let that information flow down to me. After that, people maybe grow and mature a little, and they start to think that even authority figures can be wrong. And so they switch to relativism, where the person now thinks that truth is totally just personal opinion, and therefore there's no objective truth, so we should just treat all of these views as equal. Then the 3rd level would be commitment, where you commit to your own views based on reason and the best available evidence. So at this point, you think there really are facts, unlike the relativist, but you also don't think that it's just everyone else's job to figure them out. You have the confidence to think that you yourself can determine the objective truth by studying the issues and using your good judgment. Okay, dualism, relativism, commitment. Confirmation bias. One of the kind of barriers to critical thinking, confirmation bias, that's when a person only seeks out what kind of things? Kind of getting you started with it. So confirmation bias, only seeking what type of information? If you have this bias, then this is what you would do. You would only seek information that what? Confirmation bias, anybody? Only seeking information that's something, that affirms their beliefs. That's right, Philip. So only seeking out supportive information that confirms what you already think is true. So it's like a bias in favor of your already settled opinions and ideas. It's kind of like tailoring your information diet to only fill you with information that reinforces your already settled beliefs. So you're never exposing yourself to the debate, to the other side, to criticisms, etc. Okay, and sadly with the internet, it's really easy for people to have confirmation bias because there's no shortage of content out there somewhere online where you can find a community at least of people that are going to boost up whatever view you have, no matter if it's weird or out of touch with reality. So we have to try and guard against the tendency to just keep on satisfying these habits of confirming what we already think is true. Sadly, there are algorithms and stuff on the internet and social media that feed into this tendency. But anyway, okay, confirmation bias, only seeking out supportive information that supports your side or your belief. Now, there's all these different qualities that good critical thinkers usually would have, and that's the next thing that's mentioned in the notes. It kind of condenses a lot of topics down into one, but here's what they really are. Analytical skills, that's the ability to provide logical support for your beliefs instead of just having unfounded or baseless opinions. Effective communication, that's being able to read and write well. Also being able to speak well and understanding, listening to people and understanding different communication styles. So let me restate that one way to make sure it's clear enough. It's speaking and writing effectively, listening well, because communication involves listening, not just you giving information, and then also knowing about different communication styles. That's effective communication. Inquiry skills, knowing how to collect, compile information for the purposes of research. So when you want to do research and do inquiry, you know how to find information, you know how to compile it and then present it. Flexibility. Intellectual flexibility is only believing things that can be somehow proven. Sorry, I'm talking about the next topic, so let me slow myself down. Flexibility, this is rather being able to change your mind or plans, but also being open to alternative ideas. Okay, so being flexible means that you're not so set in your ways that you can never have a change of opinion if there's reasonable evidence and argument to support that change. So anyway, flexible-minded people, they keep an open mind. They're willing to change their views if it's based on good evidence, and they also listen to other people and their ideas. Open-minded skepticism, that's what I was just going to mention. That's only believing things that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, but at the same time keeping an open mind to all the different sides until such evidence arrives. So imagine a juror who says, I'm open-minded to whether it's guilt or not guilty, so I'm not going to sort of prejudge anything, but I'm not going to make my judgment until I really have a solid basis of evidence and fact to make a case. So you keep an open mind, but in the end, you're only going to side with something that you think can really be demonstrated by a good proof beyond reasonable doubt. The method of doubt. Now, this was an idea that was mentioned by René Descartes, who's a famous French philosopher of the 1600s. The method of doubt says to assume what? Can anybody tell me this one? What's the method of doubt? Assume to be blank, blank, blank. Let me know about that part. Method of doubt, Descartes. Let's just see if we can touch base with that. Thanks, Lan. Yeah, so it is assumed to be false anything and everything that can even possibly be doubted. It's a little bit extreme, he says, take skepticism to the farthest it could possibly go. If there's even one possible chance that something could be wrong, let's say that it is. And by doing that, he thought we'd be able to find out what was totally certain, which he believed was important to identify what was certain. Anyway, though, yeah, he says, assume to be false everything that can possibly be doubted. With his method of doubt, he says, you can't even really say for sure that you're watching this lecture because maybe it's all a dream and none of this is real. I don't think we would go that far with our own doubts, but it is, I think, a good moral to the story to have a healthy dose of skepticism in your life. Don't be the kind of person who just believes things too easily. That's gullibility, and sometimes that's a lack of critical judgment. Okay, collaborative learning. That's easy. Working well with other people to find shared solutions to common problems instead of just doing everything by yourself and shutting down other people when they try to give you input or advice. Then there's creative problem solving. That is being able to come up with imaginative solutions to complex problems, sometimes thinking of these contingency plans in advance. In other cases, being able to quickly come up with a solution in an improvised way by analyzing all the factors in hand and making the right decision. Okay, so we're running low on time, but we've made good progress through the first half of notes, stuff from chapter 1 and chapter 8. When we come back on Tuesday, I think we're going to focus more on the second half of the study guide. But let me ask you guys this, okay? to maximize the effectiveness of the time that we spend. Try to develop some sample answers to some of the topics that you see listed here. And we would like to pick up the pace a bit. You know, on Tuesday, we can get through more information because the previous class period, we did get through a little bit more. I think there were just some students that really had like detailed notes and they were kind of like leading us through it. So we had a little bit of a quicker response on some of these questions, which would be good because the more of it that we get through, then the more that's on the record. So I'm just saying, let's try to pick up the pace and be as fast as possible on Tuesday. Speed will be great for us on that day. So look at the second half of the study guide list, starting with chapter 5. Try to have some information ready to go. And then when we come back, we'll be able to quickly do this. We're helping each other out. Everyone has a role to play. So if you have a good set of notes and you've got some detailed preparation, you're going to do well on the final, which is, I would hope, what you want. So we're going to try and make great use of the time on Tuesday. The other group from 12:45 to 2:10, they got through the rest of the chapter 8 stuff. So if you wanted to be caught up with them, you could also watch the lecture that I have posted for the hour before us. It's the same exact topic in class. It's also Orange Coast. It's just the 12:45 to 2:10 group. So for some of the information that we maybe didn't get to, if you want to have a chance to see some of it reviewed, you can look at that. You can also do this. We have an earlier review session in the class before the midterm, and that review session, I think, did go over like all the stuff on the first half of the study guide. So part of the point of this meeting today was to kind of revive your memory, get you back in the habit of answering these questions. But if you just want to refer to some of our earlier discussions of it, there are earlier videos. Just look at the date assigned in the syllabus for midterm review sessions, find it in the YouTube channel, and then you'll also be able to use that to help you with your preparation on the first half of the topics. But on Tuesday, we're going to focus on half 2. So come prepared, and we'll make good use of the time. All right, guys, so I think that's about it for today anyway. Let me know that we're all good and you're having no problem closing the stream, and then I'll see you guys after the weekend. Don't forget to turn in that homework tomorrow, too. And if you need anything between now and tomorrow or Tuesday, I'll be checking my emails. So is everything cool? Just let me know. Quick question, Matt. How many questions will be on the final? 34. There'll be 34 questions on the final with 3 points each. 34 times 3, 102. It's possible to get 102 points out of 100. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Take care, and I'll see you soon. All right, then. Bye-bye.